I'm Kevin McGahee, Head of Product and Solutions at DreamFactory, and we are focused on streamlining business processes, cybersecurity, and assuring reliable data sources through API generation. The solution solves a complex problem that all organizations face across the government and commercial industries, which is building secure, reliable, documented data access layers. Despite there being many API development frameworks such as Flask and Fast API, this problem still plagues organizations big and small. Organizations such as National Institutes of Health and the House Digital Service utilize DreamFactory in production to accelerate their API integration and development processes to deliver projects faster than expected. Using DreamFactory gives these organizations peace of mind that their APIs are secured through role-based access controls, API key management, rate limiting, authentication, and are reliable, scalable, while always having the necessary documentation for troubleshooting and updating. In the case of NIH, DreamFactory gave them the ability to increase project speed at least 10x. We will showcase through the demonstration that DreamFactory stands out against in-house development initiatives using API frameworks and boasts robust API generation capabilities compared to tools such as Apigee due to Apigee's manual processes for creating a proxy, assigning objects, manual code logic, and accessing stored procedures. Now that we are within the DreamFactory platform, we will take a look at generating an API from a SQL Server database, the corresponding documentation, and security controls from within the point-and-click admin UI. From here, we will get started by selecting the database API type from our navigation. To start, we will select the plus button to establish a new connection. We can then search from over 20 of our different database connectors for SQL Server. Upon selecting SQL Server, we will be prompted to provide various details around this connection, starting with giving our API a name and description. Here I have simply named it SQL Server and will click Next. Our last configuration is providing the credentials to access this database. Now that I've filled out the 6 required fields for DreamFactory to establish the connection to the SQL Server database, I can go to the bottom and click Save. At this point, we get redirected to our API documentation, which is a standard Open API spec. DreamFactory automatically projects your full CRUD capabilities against your database, including access to the schema, your tables and views, as well as any stored functions and procedures. We can access a tables dataset by navigating to Get Table Name, trying it out, and we have additional parameters that can mimic our SQL queries in a RESTful manner. I'll navigate to provide the table name specifically for medevac requests, hit Execute, and instantaneously we get back the corresponding curl request as well as our request URL with our dataset from that medevac request table. If I want to invoke this API outside of the platform, I must provide an API key because DreamFactory has no concept of an open or public API. To start, we'll go to Role-Based Access, add a new connection, and provide the corresponding details. I have named my role and created a read-only access to the medevac request for that SQL Server API. Lastly, I'll generate the API key. This can be done under the API Keys tab. We will create a new key by selecting the plus button and providing our details for the API key. Now that I've named my API key and attached the read-only role to it, I can hit Save, and we now have our API key available to us. Since we now have an API key, we're able to leverage our newly generated SQL Server API outside of the DreamFactory platform by utilizing the request URL in tandem with the API key passed securely to the headers of the request. In this short demonstration that is just scratching the surface of the API generation capabilities, you can start to see that DreamFactory is an incredibly powerful point-and-click platform for generating and managing APIs.